Welcome to Happy Homes and Gardens. I am your host. My name is Daphne Royce. I am a real estate broker, architecture, and interior designer. Jack McCauley wears many hats and can be described as an engineer, hardware designer, inventor, video game developer, investor, and philanthropist. But he is most well known for Guitar Hero and Oculus VR. Let's welcome Jack to tell us more about his ventures. Hello, Jack.
Hello. Thank you, Daphne. I'm getting to know you, and I know some common people. About myself, just let me talk about the childhood a little bit, and that'll give you a broad picture of where I'm at. I'm actually started as an artist. I was a prolific painter and drawer, but it was all science fiction stuff. And as a kid, and then I didn't know how things worked, like an engine in a car or, a rifle or whatever. I just had no clue, but I could draw it. So I endeavored at some point later on in my probably early teens to try to figure out how things worked. And I would go to the library and I would read a book. That's what I did. There were no computers. I mean, we had a PDP-11 over in high school. I wasn't into that at the time, but there weren't really no personal computers per se. That few out there so you had to go to read, and that's what I did. I'm a prolific reader of technical journals and so forth. So, and that's sort of what got me launched. And in addition, I got a nationwide scholarship at age 9 for design. I did, just a side note. But I've always enjoyed drawing and painting and art and music and things like that. That's really where I'm at. Going into video games is a natural thing for me because I like visual stuff. And Grunge named me the top 100 living inventors, along with Musk and Jennifer Doudna at UC Berkeley, who's a colleague, CRISPR gene editing person. So as a kid, that's all I did. I was kind of a little bit introverted and shy. I think I'm not so shy anymore, and this sort of played well for me because I like to be alone and just check things out. So hobbyist, and I had all kinds of, mechanically oriented hobbies, electrical things. So just a kid who'd like to hack stuff and, take things apart. And so later on in life, I decided that I would stop screwing around in school and try to get my act together academically, and I did. I got a scholarship to UC Berkeley from the Navy, full scholarship, to attend UC Berkeley, which was a real gift. Now, my opinion of UC Berkeley at the time, that's my opinion, was that it was hard. I didn't understand why they had me do silly things. It seemed silly to me, but it was disciplining me to work. Learning to work is what you learn in school, how to work. And I was a beneficiary of US taxpayers' generosity, and they've been paid back in full spades. So I am an inventor. I got numerous patents. I invented a scrolling mouse going back in the 80s, all kinds of gadgets. Not all of them I finish. I start out and then I'll abandon the invention if I see it's not commercializable or fruitful in any sort of, commercial way. So I did inventions, and you brought up Guitar Hero. Of course, that's another thing. I'll mention this, that my career is built on the backs of others. It's not just me. My relationships with people go back 40 years. We're colleagues and so forth. And I make a habit of calling people if it's acceptable, if it's correct to do so. I will call them and say how they're doing or go out to lunch with them. And one of the guys that who hired me back in the 80s as a hardware engineer, digital sequential logic engineer, software engineer, I stayed in touch with for 40 years. And through that guy, I started getting gigs. He would hey, you should talk to this guy. That's kind of the way it goes. I never had a resume. I didn't have a cover letter resume because of the industry that I'm in is pretty small and people know each other. Like HR requires you to give an employment application or a resume, but I never really had one. I just kind of know people. So that's in kind of a nutshell of the early sort of part of my life, and also the how I got where I am. So when you go to work for a company and you are doing work there, you're required to do intellectual property work, which consists of inventions and so forth. And the purpose of this is defensive, so that if you get sued, you can turn around and say, well, you're infringing on this idea or patent or copyright. This is the purpose of it. And it has to be well organized and structured strategically. You brought up Guitar Hero. That was my job there, principally. And I was designing the equipment. I didn't design all of it, but most of it, I think I did most of it. And my job there was to basically to do the intellectual property work for them and for that franchise. Incidentally, Charles and Kai Huang, who hired me, also got me my, I sit on the board of the finance board at UC Berkeley, and they got me that gig. So that's how it works out. Now, Charles and I didn't always get along very well, but he kind of remembered me. And this was after I left Oculus back in 2015. So this is how it played out for me, and it still kind of works out well. Although I'm retired now, I really don't do any kind of career thing anymore. It's stuff that I am involved with that I think is important, and I do philanthropic things, philanthropic things. I work at UC Berkeley. I'm a teach there. I'm the innovator in residence at UC Berkeley Jacobs Institute, which I helped finance along with Paul Jacobs and other generous people. And I work there. I teach in environmental engineering. I have an interest in environmental issues. I'll talk about that later. So all of these gigs I got through other people. It's not like I turned in an employment application at HR. It just didn't work that way for me. Principally because the video game industry is small. I mean, it sounds large. It's really not. It's not that big. Maybe bigger than now than when I was in it. But I just loved it. I love doing it. I love working on art. It's a combination of art and tech, as you know. I love the tools. I love the people, especially a lot of creative people. This is the key to when you're working in an endeavor like that. There are many talented people. And at a video game company, not the publisher necessarily, but the studio, there are artists, there are quality assurance testers, there's software engineers, all these talented people. And you got to recognize that when you're managing them, you got to let them go and not stick your nose in it. Every time I did that, it didn't work out. So I kind of learned over time, if you got good people and the creative people, that you just get out of the way. And kind of what I did at Oculus in a way. Interesting. This is another connection here. A guy shows up at my, he calls me and he goes, Greg Deutsch from Activision. He said, Chief Legal Counsel. I said, yeah, I work with Greg. And he goes, well, he recommended you to help me with this thing. And I said, okay, what is it? And he said, it's a VR headset. And I go, oh no, here we go. But they brought it, and I thought it was okay. I mean, it was good. It was pretty good. But I mostly like the guys there, particularly Brendan Uribe, who I'm really fond of. A good boss and a straight up guy. Now, I'll qualify that by saying when you're in a stressful environment and the workload is huge, and my workload at Oculus was enormous. At 80 hours a week is what I was doing, probably close to that. Tempers run. And the thing that'll drive me out of a company very quickly is politics. I can't stand politics, and I have learned to avoid it. When that starts, I exit. I'm gone. At Oculus, it started to get that way a little bit, and I could see it coming. I went to my boss, Brendan, and this was after the company was acquired by Facebook back in 2014. I said in April. So this is what happened. I was in China. I worked in China. We were doing production. I designed the headset DK1 headset, pretty much my design. DK2, not so much, but I was doing the production engineering and production on them. So Brendan calls me at, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I knew something was up. I didn't know the exact details. They held that close to their chest. Even though I'm co-founder, I was gone all the time, so I wasn't around to see what was really going on. So he goes, "Guess what?" And I go, "What?" Because it was 3 o'clock in the morning. I go, "Man, don't call me at 3 o'clock in the morning." He goes, "You have a pile of money that could go to the moon." I go, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well, Facebook acquired us. The deal's done." And right then, I knew I was going to leave. I didn't want to stay there. First of all, Facebook's not a hardware company. They're not a video game company. And you go there and there's beanbag chairs and stuff that I'm not familiar with, seating across on a bench table, looking at someone all day long. I kind of am a cubicle guy. So it just wasn't a good fit for me. So I went and talked to Brendan. I said, I have 5 years. I have to stay here 5 years to get all my money. And he goes, "Well," he goes, let me work on that. And he came back to me and said, "You can leave." I said, "I get all my money?" He goes, "You get everything." I said, "I'll see you later." Not quite like that. I was at Facebook for a while, but I just didn't fit in there. As the oldest person there, by a pretty long stretch, maybe 15 or 20 years, a couple of people there, the cook in the kitchen was my age, the chef, but I just didn't see it as a good fit. And from then on, after I exited, I decided to spend my time trying to give back. And that's kind of what I've been doing. Not so much the last couple of years, but prior to that, I was very generous with the money, and lots of education oriented stuff, drug policy research, Asia Society, the Math Institute in Berkeley. Incidentally, the gig as a trustee at the Math Institute is a prestigious place. The top tier mathematicians there was due to a guy I worked with who got me hooked up with David Eisenbud, who's the boss there. And then I'm on board. And of course, got a little bit of money, not too much, but that's how it played out. They just say he's a good guy and he's smart, and you try each other out and see how it works. And so same thing kind of went down with Rand, although I'm not really working with Rand at this moment, but they contacted me and they said, "We're doing research on opioids." And I go, "Opioids? Why are you researching that?" "Well, because lots of people are dying from overdoses." And so that's how I got involved with that. The issue there is just, it's staggering. Since 2019, San Francisco has had 3,000 deaths from opioid overdose. Unbelievable. And it's a hard thing to control, right? You arrest people for it. You're not really getting them treated, and they have to go into a treatment institution, mental institutions, basically, where you have to put them to get their spiritual stuff straightened out. And so I just was on board with that. And Asia Society, I worked in China, spent a lot of time in China, right? 15 years out of the last 30 I was there. So it just was a good fit, and Asia Society is a good fit. And I really like the people there. Margaret Conley, I like all those people. They're just great. So that's kind of what I'm doing. You have a question about VR, and I will get to that right now, because I'm not going to say anything bad about anyone. I know the people who did the Apple headset, the Vision Pro. It's spectacularly good. I know, of course, my staff and people that I worked with, the colleagues, but it just hasn't taken off. It hasn't, and there's a lot of reasons for that. It makes people sick. That's a principal one. It's called vestibular illness, dizziness. Makes you dizzy. A lot of people get dizzy from it. I get a little bit of dizziness from it. It's really uncomfortable. And that's the principal holdback, the comfort level of having on your head. Any VR company, any headset maker is going to run into this. And I spent a lot of time trying to fix that with head tracking and so forth, and a system to track position in space with great detail and great accuracy after I left Oculus. And I wasn't able to fix that. And the inventor side of me was telling me I need to attack that problem. And we did. My staff here, we spent a year on that, or after I left, because I thought I was going to get a breakthrough. I thought everyone was doing it wrong and I could do it, but turns out it's not a fixable thing. And so to your question in VR, what the issues with it are, is this just now people, when you play a video game, right, the visual part of it fades. The gameplay is the important part, how the strategy of the game plays. And it has to be very carefully crafted. I'm not talking about Guitar Hero. Guitar Hero is different. That's a quick play rhythm game. I'm talking about an FPS, first person shooter. In order to keep the players engaged, you have to give them cookies of one sort or another. And the visual part of it's less important. If I were in video games today, I would be working in mobile. That's where I would be, because everyone has a phone. And that's the greatest distribution of your content that you can get. Games, there's a game called Roblox. It's quite popular with young people. It's done really well since COVID hit. 2019, its user base has gone up spectacularly well. It's a really popular game. It has its own currency. And it's a social thing, right? The kids play with each other and they're playing with their friends online. That's the attractor to it. It's social. And if you miss that strategy and social, the game, you're going to miss it. The game will miss. And so to make a long story short, Oculus doesn't play well into that particular thing. It's kind of isolating. The headsets are isolating. Quest is kind of isolating. How to fix that? I'm not sure how to fix that, but such a problem, essential problems with it. So the visual part, the VR headset Quest is very, very good. It's great. Is very good. You know, the visual part is very good, but it's not important to gameplay. And Facebook Meta is not a game company, right? And they kind of screwed up the launch of Horizon Worlds, and the communication was not right. That's the other part, is the video game, the trailer for the game has to play like a movie. It has to draw you in. And if you notice, there's a commonality in these trailers, and there's always a person, an anti-hero or a hero, who they present in the trailer first. And so you get this identity, empathetic identity going with them. That's the key. So you have to draw people, and you play on their human side, and that's really the key to the game. And I'm not sure that VR is in that spectrum of things. So that's my read on it. I think, you know, but the guys at Apple, those guys really tried to hire me. I don't know. I was just left Oculus. Wasn't too thrilled with it, but I mean, Apple's a $3 trillion company. It's got the GDP of some countries, the GDP of Mexico, I think, pretty close to that. Not sure that's true, but I think they're 10 trillion or something like that. But you know, it's got the GDP. It's just a successful company. Whatever happens with Vision Pro won't affect their bottom line. Just about everybody in the United States owns an iPhone, I would say. A lot of people do. And so if I were to put a betting man, I would say that the Apple Vision Pro, if they were going to be in gaming, would probably stand the best chance, probably. But the price point, it's $3,400, right? That's what a car costs. You know, how is a person in Guadalajara, Mexico, going to afford a $3,400 headset? They have to figure that out. It has to be financed somehow. And if given a choice of paying rent for a year or buying the Vision Pro, I think these people would choose the rent, right? A natural thing. So they have launched it, and we'll see how it does. I am wrong often, and I may be wrong on that one, but it's just tough. There's other, you know, everyone was talking about VR like maybe 8 or 9 years ago. It was on a popular comedy show called Silicon Valley. They skewered it. They skewered Oculus. And now they're not really talking about it anymore. They're talking about AI, right? You hear that a lot. Now going back into the 90s, I was hearing about this too. And I go, what is it? Mm-hmm.
What is it, your view on AI in ChatGPT?
Yeah, well, ChatGPT is a software layer that runs on a supercomputer. And the supercomputer is the Azure supercomputer by Microsoft. They've built a AI supercomputer. it's really got a standard backbone, but it has a bunch of GPUs in it. Here's an interesting point, and then I'll get on to the question of ChatGPT. Without video games, there would be no AI. Now, video games don't use AI, but they use a GPU. And if it were AI alone that created the market for GPUs, it's just not that big. But the video games created the GPU. The GPU is the graphics processing unit that sits inside of a desktop gaming rig or Sony PlayStation or what have you. There's the engine that's running the graphics. The mathematics involved, the tensor mathematics involved in AI are the same thing that video games use, pretty much the same stuff for shading and polygon rendering and so forth for a game. So because of video games, all of a sudden we have GPUs everywhere, right? And you can't run AI on the standard computer. It's too slow. The latest NVIDIA GPU is 100 teraflops. It's 100 trillion floating point operations per second, unheard of 15 years ago. You get 10 of those in a bank, on a bus, on a computer, and you can run them in parallel. And so because of, I maintain because of video games, it's made AI possible. Everyone's buying GPUs from NVIDIA and other people. I'm not going to get into who's making those, but mostly NVIDIA. So everyone's buying them right now. Elon Musk just bought a bunch of them for some reason. I don't know what he's doing, but to your question, ChatGPT, there's nothing novel or new there. That's AI has been around since the 40s. They had a running tensor mathematics on a standard computer in the 60s, and it's just too slow. And to make it to do anything, it maybe print out one word a minute. ChatGPT. So it's just the evolution has played out, and it's primarily due to video games to a large degree. Now, the question of ChatGPT, it's complicated. There's a guy, Wolfram's a math guy. I think his name's Steve Wolfram. He did a write-up on that. It's a very good write-up on the layers of ChatGPT. But it's basically the backbone of that is a Microsoft supercomputer that's remote. You know, it's sitting probably in Washington somewhere, and that's the background of it. So to your question, you're going to see more of this kind of thing. What's shocking about ChatGPT was I ran my name in ChatGPT to see what it said. It was all wrong. Most of the stuff was not right, but I wanted to see how accurate it was, and it's what it's seeded with. So if there is a Reddit column that's negative about someone, and you type their name in there, more than likely they'll pull up some sort of negative something or other that someone has physically entered into a computer, typed into Reddit or whatever on Wikipedia. That's where its sources are. It pulls those from those sources. That's where it's getting its information.
Question to you: how do you know what are the real news and what are the fake news? The information you get from ChatGPT, how do you identify?
Well, you can't tell. There's no way to tell. There's no editor, right? At a newspaper, right? There's supposed to be an editor who reviews all of the opinionated stuff and the articles and sorts through that. And a good editor can figure that out. Now, there's no editor that I've seen in there. Anyone's the editor, right? You just stick data in somewhere and it pulls it out and it adds that to the pile of stuff about a subject per se. So let's say, so that's my feeling on it is that it can be spoofed and a little bit scary. I think that you could have it write an article with completely false information and it's believable, perfect grammar almost, and it's believable. So that's the problem with it. And you could seed it with things about a political candidate, right? Say negative things about this person. It may not be true, but it becomes everywhere. It gets distributed out. So I know a lot of reporters go to that to type in stuff to find out, do some research, quick, easy research, right? They don't have to search around too much, right? So, but there's, for cheating in college, you can have write an essay for you. ChatGPT can also write songs, little country western songs. So yeah, it's unsure at this point how that's going to play out in the society. And you could use it to stick bad information about a country, let's say, there's a number of things. It's a lot of negatives to it. I've seen some art, VR art. It's demonic looking stuff. I don't think it's bright and cheery stuff. So it has there's a negative, there's a dark side of it. How to control this? Well, there is no legislation right now that I'm aware of that is attempting to control it. Any legislation that comes out of Washington, I wouldn't trust. It's politically slanted probably. So I just think that there's a dark side of it. And I think it's the other thing. A lot of people don't know what it is, what AI is. They don't know, but I do. I know what's underneath it all. So it's a neural network. That's what basically drives it. So it's a scary term. What is AI? Well, it's a neural network, but they don't know. And so if you don't know what it is, it can be kind of scary, I think, scary term. So there's a lot of talk about it right now. You could wage a PR war against an enemy using AI and just distribute fake articles, like Ukraine just lost 100,000 soldiers, and that goes everywhere. And it may not be true, but something like that, it's just it's a little scary. And there's a good reason to worry about it. That a neural net doesn't think. It doesn't do that. It's pattern recognition. That's what it's good at. It does very quickly. That's essentially the core of it. And initially was used for facial recognition because it can recognize faces, right? That's the kind of technology it is, really. So to your question, I think there's good reason to worry about it. Particularly with, you see this going on in society now, like you'll see something appear somewhere, then you find, and all the news networks pick it up, then you find out it's not true, completely not true. You can imagine that if you had a machine that could do that 24/7, how potentially hazardous that would be, especially to liberty or something like that, freedom. And so I think you have a good point, Daphne, in asking me this, because I think there's reason to worry. Can a political entity regulate that? I don't think they should, because they're going to regulate it with a bias, because they're going to make it look good for themselves, right? So maybe there has to be an AI governance of some sort, a machine that does the governance. I don't know. So
That's going to be a tough one.
yeah. So in the 90s, I took through the extension at UC Berkeley, I took AI classes there because I had no idea what it was. I thought it was a computer brain or something, and I wanted to find out. And I found out later it's just math. It's linear algebra. It's what it's doing very quickly. So I'm not so scared of that. But yeah, when you see the thing about ChatGPT, it allows a layman to play with it, right? You don't have to have any education to knock it around, right? A neural network, 30 years ago, you had to be a programmer with the data in it. You had to teach it. You had to use the programming methods to teach it. So, or to get the information out. But now a layman can use it, and it's quite startling. And the grammar, like I said, the grammar and spelling are near perfect. And I just wonder about cheating. Like if you got asked to write an essay, what you would do as an instructor is give them the question, and then the instructor takes that to ChatGPT and gets the output, and then compares it to what the students turned. If they're too close, then something's up. But I didn't run any. I'm at UC Berkeley. I teach environmental engineering. I don't run any cheating there. I'm aware of it, but I don't run any of that there. They don't need to cheat. The students at Berkeley are pretty sharp for the most part. So I'm sure it goes on. So incidentally, speaking of cheating, when I was in college, I went to Berkeley. I took linear algebra, right? Discrete mathematics, which is a weird thing. And I had it overlapped in it with another class. Like I just screwed up my schedule, so I had to miss lectures. I didn't go to lectures. I went to the other lecture, and I went in to take the final, and I did really well on it because I've studied it, right? So I go in there, and the instructor goes, "You haven't been here," and I said, "I know. I got another class," and she goes, "This is odd." She goes, "Your score, the difference between your homework and your midterms and your finals is too different." And I explained to her that I cram, which is what I did. No, I don't recommend that, and she said, "Well, you got to take it over. You got to take the final over." I said, fine, I'll do it right now. And I did, and I got a better score because I already taken it. So yeah, that's the thing about cheating is that, it's not a beneficial at all. And if you cheat and you carry that into your work life, it's just dumb. It's just a dumb thing to do. People can see it, so.
When you talk about Guitar Hero video game, and you mentioned that you love to draw, did you create all the characters?
I did not. Here's what went down. There was another company. This is a company called Red Octane, Charles and Kai Huang's startup company, right? Video game rental business. They decided to publish a game. It's a great book. This would be a great book. And the game was a dancing game, like Dance Dance Revolution, which came out in '99. You basically sit on a mat with switches and you dance, right? It instructs you where to put your feet. And it's called a rhythm game. So they play a song and you got to dance to it. And then the better you dance, the better your score, right? So they created a rhythm game and got sued by Konami, DDR's publisher. So they had this game engine with another company called Harmonix. Harmonix wrote the game. We weren't a game studio. We made hardware there. So we hired Harmonix to write Guitar Hero 1. And incidentally, the original Guitar Hero 1, we could not get the original artist tracks because a lot of artists thought it was a dumb idea to have an air guitar game, but a few of them didn't. They saw it. And Dave Mustaine from Megadeth, we got their masters for Symphony of Destruction. We got their masters, and he thought it was a great idea, and he was right. He's an artist, that guy. He's an unusual guy. He's got issues, but that's how it went down. And so we had Harmonix write the game. We built, another guy and myself built the hardware. I didn't really do too much on the wired guitar stuff, but they built the hardware in China and bundled it with the game. Now, this was a risky undertaking for Activision to acquire the company. Before we published the game, they were going to acquire us for the low sum of $120 million is what they got. That's cheap. And it's risky because it's hardware, right? And it's expensive, right? We were paying $8 for the plastic guitar, bundled with the CD for the game. I on CDs back then, and a box, and it goes to Best Buy or something like that, Walmart. Very risky, and they're adverse to doing hardware because one problem and it's a disaster. There were no problems. We had very zero returns on the guitar, so where they were perfect, and so it did phenomenally well. It was a cultural hit. I had no idea what was going to happen. I thought it was fun. I'm not a deep Dance Revolution guy. I don't like that type of game. I'm more of a cockpit game guy. So it did well. Guitar Hero 2, Guitar Hero 3, 4, Guitar Hero 4's world tour, 64 million units, the highest grossing video game up to that point in 2006 of all time. Everybody that was affiliated with Red Octane / Guitar / Activision did well. It was nice for me. I sold chips I sold the chipset for Guitar Hero. That's how I got my feet in there, kind of. I had a chipset for a PS2 game controller that I had it worked with every single game. It was flawless. I spent a lot of time on that. Essentially, that's what I sold into the franchise. I sold chips to them, and I don't think they liked that very much, but so everyone did well, and I was happy with it. I got some recognition for that, I think, and I sold all my video game patents to them, to Activision too, selling stuff. And I didn't know what patents. I have a patent that's not even being used. To give me 50 grand. So what? Give me 50 grand. I'll sell it. I'm not using it. Kind of what my thinking was, but I think they go for a much higher premium now. But and the patents were the sort of some of the background of Guitar Hero were those patents. So I had patents on other kind of stuff, a balance board game and some other stuff, drums and things like that I was working on. So overall positive experience. Yeah.
I also have another question. So you mentioned earlier about you are innovator in residence in UC Berkeley.
Yes.
And you was talking about the climate change.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about it?
Well, I'll tell you how I ended up at Jacobs. I helped build the place. So I donated money and I got involved with the staff, and they're wonderful. That's the best place I ever worked is Berkeley. I mean, despite the fact that I hated the place when I was a kid, when I was young, it's actually a great place. Really nice people there and low politics, just a perfect fit. So I like the place and I like the staff, especially the dean and other folks that work there, professors and so forth. I just hit it off with them, I think. So the center that we built is a maker space. I donated money, as did Paul Jacobs, the chairman of Qualcomm. Paul and I principally, I think, put most of the cash into that. And what it is, it's over on the corner campus. The kids go there and they learn how to use their hands. The problem I had with hiring people was always hand skills. They didn't have the ability to use tools and things like that. I don't know what happened. They used to teach that when I was in high school. We taught that. You had to go to a shop class, right? High value stuff. And I just thought it would be to get modern tools in there, 3D printers and so forth, and get the students familiar with those. Because when they go into their job at the startup company or wherever they go, they're going to be using that stuff. They're probably prototyping things and using stuff like that. So that's the purpose of the place. It's a makerspace, essentially teaching hand skills and thought process, and make art and beautiful tables and all kinds of stuff there. It's a mix of things. So it's a playpen, really, is what it is for the students and me too. So incidentally, I learned about 3D printers, which is printing objects. Like you can print these glasses here, let's say, in a machine, just print them out, right? And I learned about that at Oculus. Before that, in a professional company, we didn't do that there. We had an outside vendor do that for us. So, and then when I left Oculus, I bought all kinds of 3D printers because I could see the utility. And that's essentially what ended up at Jacobs, or a bunch of 3D printers and CNC routers for cutting wood shapes and art and so forth. So it's just a great place to learn. And I think it's very popular on campus. It's a super popular place. And they have a graduate program, a master's program, 17 months, undergrad also. So to segue into the environmental stuff, I remember being in LA as a kid, and it was smoky all the time. Like if you're in LA, like say Palo Verde, and you look across the valley, you can see the mountains on the other side. You can these days. You could not see them before. And it was due to automobile emissions, 100%. That's what was causing it, mostly. And so what they did was it came out with this thing called a catalytic converter. It's got a chemical in there that converts unburned hydrocarbons and so forth to CO2 and water. That's what it does. That cleaned the air up. Just a little device like that. But that and other stuff too, but fuel injection, things like that. Computers on cars cleaned it up. So that was my interest in that stuff. I think that, on a larger scale, here's a little story. Coal as a fuel, you hear negative things about it, right? It's an excellent fuel. The amount of processing you have to do to coal to get it into the boiler and making energy for you is very little. And so the total energy equation for coal is zero processing. It's a rock, you dig it out of the ground, you fill it in a bucket, that's basically all you do with it. The problem with coal is it's cheap, and it gets and because it's cheap, it's burned without thoughts of making it efficient, making it more efficient. So a vehicle like a car, if you have a gasoline car, I've got an EV, electric car, is only 29% efficient. The 29% of the calories you put in there go to turning the wheels. The rest is heat, dissipated as heat. So CO2 gas comes out, other gases too, but it's not, it's 29% efficient. It's pretty bad. Now, there's others who claim that the cars are more efficient, hybrids and so forth. Yeah, you can recover a lot of the energy, the inertial energy of the car by putting it in a battery, right? That's kind of how it works. So I started getting into the climate change. This is, well, if it's CO2, which is causing global warming, like the place is getting warmer. I did the research. It's getting warmer for sure. At night, it's not getting warmer in the day. It's getting warmer at night. The nighttime maximum temperatures have gone up, but not as same rate as the minimum temperatures, which means energy is being retained in the atmosphere and not being emitted out into space. If it's clear and you're in the desert, that a cubic meter of air heats up, it emits its radiation back up into space, goes away up out into space. So this is not happening like it should. And so I looked at the causality issues, and the more I looked at CO2 as the cause, the least I think it is. Actually, I don't think that's it. Now, I'll qualify it. I'm not a chemist. Other chemists I've talked to have said I'm wrong. I'm not. I'm not a meteorologist or a climatologist. I'm just a data gatherer. And we went around and gathered data for irrigation sites. We got data from the government on all the cities in the United States. Without a doubt, the average temperature is going up at a rate of 0.04 degrees per year. 0.04 degrees per year. In 10 years, it goes up 0.4 of a degree, 0.5, let's say half a degree, right? So it is. So what's the cause of it? Well, if you look at CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere, it's very, very small. I'll give you an example. If you had 1 million molecules of air, you just took a scoop of air, and each molecule is the size of a ping pong ball, which is 1.57 inches, and laid all those molecules, that 1 million molecules, end to end, it would stretch 25 miles. 25 miles from here to downtown San Jose, California. Of that, the CO2 occupies 25 feet of that 25 miles. It's super low concentrations. So just a small portion of that is CO2. I didn't know this. I got this right from the government here in the United States. So it's very, very small. And how much has it gone up in the last 250 years? Well, it's no longer 24 feet, it's 50 feet. It's very small increase, very small. So this is my claim is we don't know what's causing this. And by targeting CO2 emissions, we may be not looking at the right thing and wasting a bunch of time doing research on it to find out that it's not CO2. There's something else going on. I don't know what it is. Water vapor is a greenhouse gas. It's the most effective. It is. Humid air, like you go to a tropical place, right? You get humid air and you walk through that, you're getting hot. And that's because the heat that's in the air is getting into your body. It's going into your body. The thermal exchange is going back into your body, starts sweating. This is a powerful greenhouse gas. And incidentally, Daphne, it's raining more. It is proportional to how much the temperature's gone up. It's getting rainier and warmer. And so the cause of that, I don't know, but I don't think it's CO2. The concentrations are too low. The CO2, the concentration of water compared to CO2, let's say it's a water molecule, right? It's 20,000 parts per million for water, roughly, at 15% humidity, and 240 parts per million for CO2. So it's just a much larger scale. So if it's getting rainier, and everywhere it is, everywhere in the United States, the rain is getting more. It's getting rainier and rainier every year. Now we had a drought here, right, in California, but that's temporary. We get that here. It has that here, and it goes away and gets dry for a few years, and it rains again, and it gets dry. It's always been like that here. So I think in terms of the forest fires and so forth, the climate events, it certainly is getting warmer. Yeah, and it's not drier. It's getting rainier. So something's wrong with the data, and this is my claim, and I got a lot of people who disagree with me. Something's wrong with what we're being told, and people are afraid to speak out, right? I mean, if you're a scientist and you're getting grants and so forth, and you come up with a different conclusion than the consensus, it's not good. You may not get your grant. Right? Pay me to find what you're looking for, So that's kind of my study and the research we did here on that. It just turns out that I was surprised by the finding, and because I didn't know, I had to do the work. I never looked at CO2. I didn't even care. So if it is CO2, right? Let's just say it is. Let's take an argument. You got to make the cars more efficient. They got to go from 29% efficiency to 90% efficiency. That might remove a lot of the CO2 if that's what's causing it. I don't think so, from the atmosphere. So at UC Berkeley, that's what I teach. I'm teaching electric vehicle technology. I know the platform well. I did all the work and research on it, so I can teach it now. So you got to make the cars and everything more efficient, and that's the solution probably if it's CO2. Not my opinion, but on the cause. So make a long story short, I was surprised by the conclusion we had here, and it's not popular. It goes against the, I just, before we did our interview here, I went online and said, like, what's the consensus in the scientific community? Well, 90% of the scientists who do work on this subject think it's CO2, and that's what they think, but not me. So,
Well, soon enough, 2035, we're going to have electric cars, right, in California,
yeah,
and that may have a different data at that point.
could be, and this could be temporary, but a temporary may be a 250 year temporary. This may be a long cycle that outlives us, all of us. Could be the Earth. We're like a very temporary being on this planet in the scheme of how long the Earth's been around. So, our sample is very small, and you have to avoid hysteria too. Every year every decade, they tell us something's going to kill us. It was going to be an ice age, right? Remember that in the 70s? And then it was Freon gas that they use in refrigerants. So it was ruining, and that sort of went away. And then the ice caps are going to melt, and that sort of went away. That's just hysteria, and people shouldn't play that. They should just look for the facts. And the fact is, I'm not sure what the status of the ice caps are, but all that oceanfront property that the politicians bought. Why would they buy oceanfront property if they thought if the ocean wasn't going to rise? I don't know if that makes sense. So
I do have a question for you about the drug policy, since you are the expert for that. Do you think we will ever fix San Francisco issues?
Oh,
I mean, not just San Francisco. I know it's all over the country.
Yeah. Drug addiction, particularly illegal drugs, opioids, is a disease. You have to recognize that it's a disease. If you got to get your head around that, it has to be treated in a medical facility. It may be a psychiatric facility, but it has to be treated that way. What to do about 60,000 people in Los Angeles who are addicted? There's just no place large enough. Same in San Francisco. What are you going to do? You're going to build a place out in the desert, a hospital, and move them out there? That seems like anti-American or not humane. Certainly what we're doing now is inhumane. That's what it's just shocking, that place. San Francisco, it's really gone into the gutter. And I lived here most of my life, 50 years, and it's just got worse. It's gotten worse. The days of San Francisco in the 1980s with the 49ers and Joe Montana and Jerry Rice are over with. Now what you have is really vacancies in commercial buildings, people who are afraid to go downtown. It's a scary thing. And same with LA. This is not just San Francisco. There are places, a lot of major metropolitan places like that. So the root of homelessness is addiction. I mean, I hate to say it, that's kind of what it is. People who are a little mentally ill, you meet crazy people, right? But they can hold a job, right? A crazy person, right? You meet them. I've run into them. I work with them, right? Just a little wacky. But you add into that a substance like fentanyl, and it pushes that wackiness into a new dimension. And they're crazy. They're truly crazy. So there is a seed for that already there. And you apply something like fentanyl to that, and it's not good. So the treatment that you have to give for that is an intensive treatment program. They have to be locked away for maybe a year.
Wow.
Yeah, but you'll save lives. And fentanyl, opioids, not just fentanyl, but opioids have killed more people in San Francisco than COVID by 3 to 1. They don't talk about that though. So it's just they were saying the other day that they only had 525 deaths from January to May of this year. I don't think that's much to brag about. So I think that's the figure, but it's just a very dangerous thing. Where's it coming from? It's coming across the border. Let's face it. You can mail it here too. You can mail it from a foreign country in a package. It can go undetected on the dark web. You see, I didn't even know about the dark web until the guys at Oculus told me about it. Said, hey, you can download this browser and check it out. You can hire a hitman. On Silk Road, you can hire a hitman. I can check it out. but there's all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is controlling that would be very difficult. You know, you can't raid people's homes without a warrant. Because a lot of things you can't do here. You don't want to do that stuff. So my thing on that is, you know, there has to be better policing. Throw people in jail when they're caught with that. If you throw them in jail, then they don't have access to it, and they may clean up. It may save some lives. Jail usually for a person like that is a shocker the first time they get it, and if they're not getting that, they're not getting part of the treatment. You can offer them to go to jail. You go into jail, you have to be here for 6 months, and you're going to a treatment program. That's your sentence. You don't want to go to a treatment program or go to a mental hospital, psychiatric hospital, you're going to stay in jail. And the person might be alive. And, you know, Robert De Niro's grandson just died of an overdose, a fentanyl overdose. Unbelievable. It's affecting broad swaths of people. It's not particular to a class. It's affecting lots and lots of families. It's pretty bad. It's a really bad disease to have. To watch a family member go down with that is just tough. So that's in a nutshell my interest in it. I thought I could help. I'm not sure how much help I've done besides the financial part, helping them out, pay for stuff. But you know, we've got researchers working on it at RAND to try to figure out. They've written a book. But yeah, I think the real problem is just having to put the people in an institution for their own good, for the good of society too. You catch a drug dealer, person selling that stuff, they need to go to prison. Like, no questions asked, they go right to prison. Soon to be replaced by another drug dealer, and you put him in prison. And so, no, you gotta, I mean, it has to be punitive. And I don't think that's the only problem with San Francisco and LA and places like that. You know, also the district attorney, there's a lot of stuff about that. You know, not punishing people for petty crimes like stealing under $1,000. That's just crazy. You know, you could put them in jail and straighten some people out, especially young people. They just, I don't like this place. I'm not going back here, and then they stop. So, yeah, that's in a nutshell. My involvement with that is providing the funding for the research and being a part of it. Although I haven't really participated too much in that lately. So.
Okay, let me ask you one last question. You
Yeah.
mentioned you retired. It doesn't look like it because your office is way busier than mine.
Yeah.
What are your hobbies that during your
Well,
retirement years?
oh yeah. So I built two cars, two electric vehicles, not a car, and two cars. From basically scratch, built one of them, and the other one was modified a car. So I like doing that. I use that as a teaching tool for people here who work here. And the foundation that I have is trying to help foster children. I also donate the wine that I make here, but that's what I'm doing. I like being involved with Berkeley. I like teaching there. I don't know if I teach this fall, but I don't think I am, but I'm too busy right now. So yeah, it's just a full-blown lab and stuff, and I've got all the equipment for development. I like doing that. It's fun to me. Designing stuff for a guy like me who likes to do creative things, it was just a gift. I mean, the education I got and everything that I got out of being involved with technology was just a gift. I love doing it. I enjoy it. It's like art in a way. It's not, you know, it's not like a painting, right? But it is art to me, and doing things that are clever. I like to do clever things. So I enjoy it. Now I don't really patent things anymore. I just give this stuff away if I have it. And I haven't found too much interest. Went into cybersecurity stuff for a while, worked on that with another engineer here. Interesting. That was a very, very revealing thing. And then, of course, with drone abatement, we were trying to figure out if we could take out a drone. We can, not 100%, but pretty easy to take them out. So those kinds of things, like those little, you know, those little quadcopter drones you see flying around at fairs and stuff, using a machine to make those things go away because they're dangerous. You could actually put putting munitions on them and dropping them on people in Ukraine, right? So those things are a threat. And the interesting thing about that is, like, if you're a commander in a military commander and you want to send someone out, your conscience, you said that person, I may send that person to its death. He may get killed, right? You remove that. and now you've got a robot. And what impact that'll have on warfare? There's no longer the risk really to, I mean, you're going to feel okay if the robot gets blown up, right? It's no big deal. It may change the way warfare is conducted because you will take chances that you normally wouldn't take with a human being. So these things are they're dangerous. I think they're pretty dangerous, in warfare and so forth. And Angela Merkel had one fly up on stage when she was there. Somebody flew one up, those things up. Yeah, and they were attacking people. I think it was in Saudi Arabia on a parade. They were dropping bombs and stuff on people with a drone. So I spent time on that, and also electric vehicles. We built 2 electric things here that pretty much just like an electric car. They're stored in a shed out there. We build that stuff though, and I use it as a teaching tool, and also the inventing part. If I can sell the invention, great. I'll sell it.
Thank you, Jack, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. It was a pleasure, and I hope to see you. If you're around this area, come by and say hi.
Okay, I will. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Daphne.